So why do you think, or why would you say that violence is a shortcut?
Yeah, because it's a conversation stopper.
Yeah.
It's a way to end dialogue, to impose will without participation, and I think that that's unsubstantive in the end, and it's always going to be false, tentative, fragile, and it's much better to work to build relationships. And of course, that's also what Jesus represents as restored relationships. So.
You talk about Jesus, the example of Jesus, this idea of a third way. Let's bring up that practical example where Jesus says, turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
What is Jesus talking about then, and what does it mean for us now?
Yeah, so and this is a very, very important example because it's a passage that has been used to justify what we were talking about in terms of cultures of violence. So the classic example would be a parishioner, a congregant going to their minister or their priest, talking about an experience of spousal abuse and being told to go back to their often male partner and turn the other cheek and take it because of the importance of the Christian institution of marriage. Walter Wink offers a very different interpretation of turning the other cheek. And he asks us to imagine a society that's an honor society, and what it would mean in that context to turn the other cheek. If you can hit someone with the backhand, your backhand, that maintains your status over them in such a society. However, if they turn the other cheek, they have to confront you as an equal and hit you as an equal. And it's actually subversive to the system. That's an interesting example because the violence of the contact is still retained, so they're still taking it's related to this idea of being creative.
Sure, and let's just let people visualize that.
Yeah.
So to keep that place of power, you're gonna backhand somebody,
right?
And then if that person turns the cheek, they're offering the cheek that you can't backhand, you can't do one of these, you have to do one of these, and you're saying what that actually does is even the playing field.
Yeah. That's what Wink's interpretation is, that it forces them to meet as equals, even in that moment of violence. So that's a really good example of the difference between just taking the violence and being passive and not doing anything about it, or confronting the system, confronting the logic of the system. And I think that's really, really, really important. And maybe this is something that we were talking about earlier. Because the system of domination is actually bad for everyone. And it particularly hurts those who are on the margins. Well, the stories that support, so we think of stories as very important. I know that that's something that Dr. Wallace is going to talk about later on. But the dominant, Wink will argue, for instance, just to compound your question, that the dominant narrative is actually of our stories, of the way that we see things. Think of like superhero movies. Is that violence is redemptive, right? That you have to fight for what's right, and it's the only way to stand up for what's true and best and good. Jesus,
right. So hold on. So so that's right. We've grown up on those stories. The only way the heroes win is to fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
So
often more fire, right? Like
more fire.
Yeah. So just compounding the violence from that point of view. Wink is offering the challenge, right, that the peace witness that Christians are called to is to disrupt those stories, to break those cycles of violence. And that is, you use that word, I don't know if it was on camera, but use that word of countercultural. It's massively countercultural, right? And Wink even argues that that's actually the dominant religion. That we think in the United States, for instance, that Christianity is the dominant religion. Yeah. But it's actually the myth of redemptive violence. That violence can save, because that's what motivates the society for the most part. That's the stories that drive. That's the stories that move across cultural boundaries in a lot of ways within the cultural matrix of the United States.
Of course, it's often hard to read the Bible, because not only was it written in a time and place far removed from us, the story that the Bible tells us often challenges the worldviews that we hold that are in opposition to what God is up to in the world. And inviting the trouble that Scripture brings, engaging that difficulty, is actually one of the ways that God is doing his work of renewal in us. Chris Green says this: God is not saving us from interpretation, but through it. It is a process that can be soul-harrowing and purgative, which is a fancy way of saying that reading and interpreting the Bible can be hard work. I know that Scripture can also bring peace and comfort, and that it can speak immediately to our circumstances. By the Spirit, it can, in a moment, bring amazing insight and understanding. It does work that way sometimes, and it's happened for me. But our overall relationship with the Bible is one of commitment and engagement over the long haul. We have to work to understand how and why books of the Bible were written and understand the cultural context of the times. And as followers of Jesus, we commit ourselves to this work. We are committed to struggling with this story, the story of Scripture, for our whole lives.